Hello again. Welcome to space. So I am testing out a new craft. I saw it in development originally. It's modeled after the MEM made by North American Rockwell, I think. Not actually made, just kind of a design. It's really interesting. I haven't looked into the all the details, history. The way I'm most familiar with this vehicle, the MEM, is that it's in a book, I believe, called Journey. It's where shortly after the Apollo program, they set the goal of going to Mars with kind of that era's technology, and so it requires some very heavy lift. But here, just to test it, we've put it in a relatively low orbit of Mars, and it's a heavy beast. This craft couldn't take people from Earth. Clearly, as you can tell, it couldn't provide the supplies to keep them alive from Earth, etc. So it's kind of part of one of those mothership proposals where, a large craft goes between Earth and Mars, and then they're transferred into this vehicle to descend to the surface. So I've set it up. So it does, this mod, the part does come with a deorbit package, like a package of solids, but I already used those, dispersed them, and have set myself up to land in Hellas. So this is one of the lowest spots on Mars. Actually, I want to add something to this. I want to add the air pressure. Oh, that might be in miscellaneous or something, or recorder or something. Dynamic pressure is handy. Atmospheric pressure, maybe. That might be what I want. All right. So let's just warp forward a bit. So it's a really beautiful mod, and it's very similar. The parts very similar to this, to the book, and it's actually landable, which is just amazing. I did a previous land now because I like to land in places where the air is very thick. I was able to land without using the parachutes, but I'm going to try using the parachutes this time. They even have like RO configs. There's RO configs included with this mod, which I'll link to. I haven't seen too much talk on the thread for a while, but I have seen some people use it, and I was like, wow, that looks good. It's been like when I originally saw this mod many months ago, it hadn't yet been textured, didn't have any realism configs, and I was considering making them, but of course I didn't have the time. So let's see, we're going to be entering the atmosphere in a bit, and persistent rotation is going to make this a little bit of a pain, but that's okay. Actually, I'll just let's warp a little faster. So we need to hold a very specific orientation. So random weird little things. I'm pretty sure this is an actual issue with the mod, but I mean, I might end up trying to contribute to the realism overhaul configs for it in very small ways. Like, I think this is a bug because I assembled this from stock, from the stock craft file. So it had hydrazine and CLF. Is that the other fuel? No, or yeah. Anyway. It has some fuels in the base that I don't think it should have, just because that's just basically a base and a heat shield. It supports the legs. Anyway, it had a little extra volume, so I added the monopropellant to both of these, just kind of stock monopropellant, which the RCS currently pulls. Like a relatively straightforward RO patch should be able to change what it uses for monopropellant to hydrazine or something. Anyway, let's just get in position. So I'm just going to look inside this craft. It's an aeroshell that covers this. So if I look inside, now there's a lab module down there. Now the inside of this is asymmetric, which is great. It's the realistic way of doing descent mode. So it's because there's mass asymmetries. One part of the shape of this is heavier than the other. It changes where the center of mass is, and it changes how it's going to bite into the air when we start descending. So this is close enough to the right position, I think. Oh, there we go. Yeah, it's close enough. All right, so let's just, of course it'll wobble a bit, a lot of it. Try to turn itself around. So let's just get it wandering kind of back towards the right position, and then I can catch it as it passes through the position I want over here. Oh man, it's rotated and everything. Yeah, it just makes it a little hard to record in a timely fashion with persistent rotation doing it, but it is realistic, so can't complain too much. All right, so now we're starting to catch atmosphere. So we're headed down. not too fast of a speed at all. So I mostly used just aerodynamics to decelerate this vehicle. And down where we're headed, the atmosphere is very thick, and so I got it down to like 1,000 meters per second or something like that. Now the delta V readout for this isn't really accurate, but that is, so this is the landing stage. So there is, if I move, let me slowly move through staging. So that's the aeroshell dropping. That's just RCS being on, which did mean to do that. Oh well, we'll see if it survives even without that aeroshell. Kind of curious how that's going to affect the center of mass. Anyway, parachute fires. So within it, so it has this little cover in the middle, and there's the descent engine is underneath that that covering. Of course, the light is doing crazy things for some reason. Just always tends to do that. So as we bite the atmosphere more, there is like kind of a default, a logical orientation for this craft. It's just a beautiful assembly because these tanks aren't built in; these are actual separate tanks, and they contain fuel for this descent stage. Now, what I was thinking I might do is for my like large Mars Direct craft, I could actually use those spots to store the liquid hydrogen for landing, and then they become fuel tanks for ascent, which would be very neat, because then I could refuel and use this descent, this base, as a first stage, effectively, for ascending. There's just all kinds of things you could do with this. Like you could actually replace some of these tanks with life support supplies if you so chose, etc. Alright, let's change the camera mode. I was like free, because then I can kind of change which side I'm looking at this from. So I've seen a lot of people really, really heavily use RCS to try to hold a roll position, or sorry, to try to hold an offset shifted position during reentry, kind of like reentry mode. But I'm not sure why they do it. Like, it spends a lot of RCS, and ultimately if you're fighting the natural center of gravity of your craft, it's just a losing battle, and it's not worth it in terms of the RCS expenditure, in my opinion. But if it works for them, it works for them. But what you really want is an actual off-center center of mass. So what's happening here is, because this is like kind of an empty lab module or something, the way it's currently set up, these tanks are heavier, so the center of mass for this craft is shifted up, and that causes it to tilt that way, and that means the air is going to bounce off and give us some lift. So you can see even now we're really high, but actually we're falling slower all the time and not faster. And so that's going to cause us to skip across the air a bit here. And so even as this shape kind of bites into the ground as we approach it, it's actually kind of being pushed off forward a little bit at the same time. It's very interesting. Now, I haven't ever tried to land this without the aeroshell, which frightens me a little bit. And I'm kind of curious what will happen with these chutes. Like I said, I didn't rely on the chutes when I've done past test landings of this craft. Like, this is one way to go to Mars. Ooh, weird. I guess it's going to pull me, rather than being shifted the way that I was shifted, these chutes are going to pull me more retrograde, like so. Although they will provide some deceleration. It's going to be a bit of a balance, which is a little tricky. I'd probably prefer to only pop them later once I've used this to great effect. So now it's kind of, there's the natural center of mass trying to pull it down into that position, and the parachute trying to pull it directly back along the forces back along this axis. So this is like a two-stage ascender, sort of, like that's embedded in this lander. But it's not just two stages. You see these tanks, these tanks separate in pairs, which is really neat. Because once you've expended a set of tanks, you no longer need them, and you can just drop them off in series. So I want to get back into that rotation I was in before. So the way the nav ball or control mechanism for this craft is set up, that's just the way it is. Usually I will set up like my Apollos or Geminis so that blue is up, brown is down, like literally up and down on this. But here it's kind of rotated 90 from that, but that's okay. I mean, ultimately you want to select the position so that you're pointing on the blue side of retrograde. You're pointing above that retrograde axis. That corresponds to the position we're seeing here. There's another thing I will tweak or look at or change, which is the ablator. I think I actually had to edit the part to get it to apply the ablator code, but again, I think that might have been because I built this from the stock craft file and just everything was kind of smushed together because of the scaling, and then I pulled it out and kind of reattached them all in the right places. Yeah, it's just behaving a bit wobbly on account of the parachute. And that parachute, it's yellow now, so I might actually lose that chute, but I could certainly survive losing that chute. Yeah, it's kind of dragging me towards this side of that, which I definitely don't want, so I think I'm going to cut the chute. Let's see, cut chute, and now we're going to wobble off a bit. Let's go on and turn back where we were now. One complaint people have about RSS or Realism Overhaul, whatever, is the landings, in a sense, take a lot longer, which is fair. But I don't mind that terribly. I mean, for me, it's worth it for the kind of balance of working closer to reality. And at least for me, games are kind of meant to be kind of nuanced and kind of relaxing. So I'm okay with a descent like this taking longer. There we go. So you can see the arrow shell heating up. Now the ablator, this number is not just showing 0. So some ablator is being lost, but not very much. It seems like the config for this base was set up to not overheat, but it's not really designed to not overheat when you're coming in from a low Earth orbit like we are, sorry, a low Mars orbit like we are right now. But not much more than that. I tried to come in from a higher altitude, say. Like if you were parking your mothership, you're taking your people to Mars with your propulsion unit and this lander, and you went into an elliptical orbit, which would make it easier to leave that elliptical orbit and head back to Earth, so kind of less fuel to insert into an uneven and non-circular Mars orbit, and then, again, save fuel on the way out. I don't think this base would survive, so I'd have to, kind of look at the actual NAR documentation, like for the actual kind of historical proposal for this craft, and see if it was supposed to be able to survive from another orbit like that, basically where you'd be hitting the atmosphere at a higher speed, like by hundreds of meters per second. Like not a huge change, but you can see that bars are already starting to fill in, and I turned on the thermal. Oh, good, it is still showing them. That's nice. So it's the skin temperature that's increasing. Oh, it was increasing. So that was approaching whatever the maximum skin temperature for this base is set, or at least the way I have it configured. I should probably construct this from scratch just so I know I've got the proper code applying to all the parts. It's weird behind the scenes things of how parts actually end up with the code that is applied to them by patches or the actual config for the parts. But anyway, so as you can see, so this is providing lift, right? It looks wonky in the nav ball here, but right now all I'm doing is hitting Q and E. I'm just holding a roll position. I'm not expending very much RCS at all relative to what I'm getting done, like the benefit I'm getting. Just if you have an offset center of mass, even if you do it just by I could have done that by, say, adding like a tiny lead weight up here. Like that's kind of legit a way that some craft have done that in the past, where they just purposely put masses offset kind of in their fore shield to provide that lift, and then they just dump those masses later on, partway through descent. It's a very clever use of asymmetries of mass to do things like that. All right, I'll just close you now. Don't need you. Come on. There we go. So we're coming down. So time to impact. In my previous test, and if this fails, I might actually just post it anyway, because who cares? Who knows? We're not going to bounce into Hellas. Fair enough. I suppose that that chute kind of caused that to be so. We're close enough now to the ground. Yeah, we don't see the rim of Hellas, so I don't think we're going to end up there. Although I don't think this is a very high place on Mars either. I need to do a full scan sat of Mars before I start sending new probes in my actual RP0 series, so I can choose good landing locations where the air is thick. Because unless you want to bring a huge amount of fuel so you can land on Mars as if it were the moon, which I don't recommend, you need a lot more fuel to land propulsively on Mars than you do on the moon. Okay, so here we come. I think that might be like an edge of the rim. So we're definitely not going to get there. But we are slowing down a pretty good amount. We're kind of getting lower decelerations all the time. But again, because we're generating this lift, it's keeping us in the air longer. And it's not even a huge amount of lift. Now, if you actually understand aerodynamic stuff better than I do, you'll see. So this lift to drag ratio, that's a pretty small number. It's like roughly 0.07. Like Apollo and Gemini have much higher numbers, like 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. It's much higher, and other like craft we've sent to Mars that kind of use this effect. I think that might be our shadow there. Yeah, it's not a weird spot on my screen. It looks like a shadow of some kind. So see, we are getting this free drag. Not just the beauty of using a bit of actual aerodynamics, and the true lovely reality of air. If you're like me and you can't build airplanes, you can still exploit some of that great aerodynamic reality for your missions. So we're getting lower and lower and slower and slower. Now I think I don't know if that's showing red because we are, I guess it doesn't matter, it didn't have it. It says spare, but the way these always work, and maybe somebody can tell me, is once I've used the parachute and cut it like that, even though it says spare, so it doesn't give me an option to arm it or to fire it again. Maybe it still does work through a, like if I had it set in an action group, it would allow the parachute to run again. But who knows. Alright, so we are approaching the ground. Now, there's a weird quirk to the way this craft works, which is a bit bothersome to me. And that is that when you put out these legs, so these are legs, by the way, that are built into the belly here. When you put them out, it actually, so let's see if that'll slow us down. It actually reduces the drag. Which isn't right. I'm pretty sure those would disrupt the airflow in such a way. Oh, nice. So apparently we were moving slow enough that this balut is slowing us down, which is very nice. It's making it a lot harder to control the craft, but I mean, it's providing such great benefit in slowing us down that I'm totally okay with that. And I may as well drop this engine cover. 1, 3, yeah. We're moving slow enough. I was just doing the math because this is the decelerative g-force we were seeing. Now I definitely don't want to be rolling like that. So I think I'm going to cut this balut while we're ahead. Cut, shoot. See, now we're kind of pointed backwards from the way we were before, and it's becoming more and more awkward to control. So I'm gonna throttle this engine up so we can actually use it for control. Now it can gimbal a lot. Which isn't terribly realistic, but I'm totally fine with it. I mean, you've got to kind of have a balance of fun and reality in your video gaming, in my opinion. Now, it doesn't give you roll control, which is important to note, so I actually have to have the RCS on if I want to roll back to the position I was in before. So right now I'm watching the suicide burn count because really, the ground is kind of too difficult to really tell how far away you are, so I'm just throttling up to keep the suicide burn counter down. Or, no, well, not down. Up, in this case. I don't want to suicide into the ground. The ground might not be super even for me, which is not fair. So I'm currently, yeah, I should probably point the way where I can see my own shadow. There we go, so I'm just throttling it down a bit, because this number is increasing and I want it to be around 0. See, we're coming down pretty fast, so you can see my frame rate isn't very good. And pretty shortly I will want to point up. There we go. Restart the engine. Yeah, it has a really high thrust weight ratio, this engine. I'll probably decrease that, although it might work for some people. Ooh, and we're really gonna smash into the ground here. Ooh, breakdance. Please land right side up. Oh, nope. Oh, no, nope, nope. So, pretty close to a landing, actually. he says, well, his craft is upside down. So let me just tell it to force rotation, yep, and land here. So come on, force the rotation. Now, come on, you gotta put me in the air a little bit. Above the ground. Come on now. Wow, are we below the ground and falling? Yes, we are. Okay. Okay, well, that was charming of it. Yeah, sometimes that works for you, sometimes it don't. But yeah, anyway, if I hadn't used the shoots kind of throw things off. They don't interact very nicely, in my opinion. So if you try to land somewhere where the air pressure is thick, you don't. I found I didn't need to use the parachutes because the descent stage has about 1 kilometer per second of delta V, and so as long as you kind of use that lift to get below that, it's not too bad to land. So I'll try that again sometime. But you know, no reason not to point this. It's a hard vehicle to land. I'll tell you that, and I'll link to the mod thread because it's awesome. And I'll probably at some point rebuild my craft file and share that for other people who want to use this thing in realism overhaul. And yeah, it's just such useful parts. You could totally tear apart. I might actually use it for the basis of my Mars Direct vehicle. We'll see. Well, thanks for watching. This has been an ahistorical descent lander, as opposed to my historical rocket launchers. Goodbye.